All right, guys. Well, welcome to a study here with about the step 10 and 11. There will be a part of step 9 that will carry into this. So let's get this meeting started with a moment of silence, and we'll get present here. We'll do a little bit of meditation and some prayer for those who wish to join. A little bit about meditation, about getting present. What I've learned is when I try to breathe, I try to feel the air come in through my nose and really come down through my throat into my lungs and then back out my mouth. And you just take that breath and then just relax. So if you want to join me, I'll kind of talk you through how I go through this. So I close my eyes and I take a breath through my nose and out my mouth, and I try to listen to things around me, and I do like my ears ringing right now. I can hear some things. Just pay attention to the things around you. Listen to the sounds, the birds if you're outside, a clock if you're inside. God, we thank you for having one another. Lord, we thank you that you're here in the midst of us. Lord, we ask you to please set aside the things that we think we know about you, about this process, and about ourselves, Lord, just long enough that we may have a new experience. God, we ask that you guide us, Lord, as we walk in expectation of what our next step is to be. Father, we thank you. We thank you that you've brought us together for a great purpose. And Lord, I just ask that we all, by your strength, your power, your love, walk away being brand new and changed. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Hopefully we all arrived. If not, hey, we'll cross paths at some point, maybe. Page 17 of the 12 and 12. I think maybe I needed to drink about 3 more cups of coffee. All right, so a little bit about history. I enjoy having a full understanding of who's speaking, when they're speaking. Just kind of like we were talking about earlier, when it comes to a picture or an understanding, it's I got to have the full thing, man. So we got Bill, who writes this book. And it was really not in the purpose of writing this book. He was writing some essays, and he wrote essays on each one of the steps. And it's somewhere around like 1955. And in that, the big book was already written. Sorry about that. So here's a little something out of this book. So if we read the forewords of the big book and the forewords of this book, it kind of tells us the purpose of this thing. So it says, the book Alcoholics Anonymous was the basic text of the fellowship. If you're on page 17, it's the second to the last sentence down there. So that being said, we know if we're going to do this program, the basic textbook that we are to follow is the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. This present volume, meaning the 12 and 12, purpose was to broaden and deepen the understanding of the 12 steps as first written in earlier work. So the purpose of this book is to broaden and deepen. So to say you have a newcomer or someone who's just starting off and they go to the 12 and 12, I mean, Bill was 15 years sober, right? 15 years of experience wrapped up in this book. To take somebody brand new, I myself have experience in that. Being super technically minded, I would get caught up in all the little technical details, and I missed the true basis of an application of these steps, which the big book is our basic text. So I rarely anymore reference too much out of the 12 and 12. But this is a circumstance that I think the 12 and 12 really lays some good groundwork for 10 and 11. So let's go to page 88.
12 and 12?
Yes, sir. Yep. As we work the first 9 steps, we prepare ourselves for the adventure of a new life. So there's some good groundwork there. So where we're at in our program, or the program, we are working the first 9 steps, which is a preparation. So it means we haven't arrived yet. We are working toward it, right? And this adventure, meaning if you ever went on an adventure before, I don't know about you, but adventures for me are fun. It's something new, and it's enjoyable, it's fun. And it's saying a new life, so that means the old life is gone, right? We're going forward with a new life in an adventure. But when we approach step 10, we commence to put our AA way of living to practical use. So this means we're going to get back to life, and we're going to get back to living day by day in fair weather or foul, meaning, hey, it's going to be sunny and beautiful outside, and it's going to be a typhoon, and dams are going to break, and it's going to flood. Then comes the acid test. Can we stay sober, keep in emotional balance, and live to good purpose under all conditions? It's interesting, Bill right there gives us a vision. And what's that vision look like? It looks like a sober life, emotional balance, live to good purpose under all conditions. It's pretty neat. We didn't even get into the first paragraph, and we already got a picture of what this thing is to look like. A continuous look at our assets and liabilities, and a real desire to learn and grow by this means are necessary for us. So we are to what? Continuously look at assets and liabilities. By this time, we would have already, looked at the true definition of an alcoholic, which is the one thing that this class of drunks have is the phenomenon of craving. 2, that given sufficient reason, we have no mental defense against the first drink. And not everybody experiences that. You can still be an alcoholic and have craving. And then 3, that our lives were a disaster managed by us, and that we needed a power that was greater than ourselves because lack of power was our dilemma. We made a decision that we were no longer going to play God in 3. So we gave that deal away. We no longer get a vote. 4, we did what? We took a look at our assets and our liabilities. We wrote that stuff down, and we wrote a forgiveness prayer, and we got free of the emotional charge, and we saw the truth about our assets and liabilities. We shared it with someone and God, saw the objectable things about our behavior. we entirely ask God to take them away. If not, we ask Him for the willingness. We humbly ask Him because we don't have the power to do that work. So we're looking at ourselves in another position, like step 3 at 6. We're surrendering even deeper than what we surrendered, what we thought we surrendered in our 3rd step, right? So then we had a list that we wrote out of our 4th step, and also our harms done list. And we're now out in this business of reconnecting with God's people and making amends, okay? And that's the picture that we have right here as we now continue to watch these assets and liabilities. It's necessary. We alcoholics have learned this the hard way, right? I mean, how many of us have went through the process, got woke up, saw the truth, started to reconnect to God's people. All of a sudden, the beautiful alcoholic thinking steps in like, oh, I'm normal, and we don't even know it, right? And, it's just kind of what it is. You walk through the door, you get hit in the head with a 2x4 so many times, and I walk through the back door and get hit too. It's just like, wait a minute, maybe I should just stand outside the building and ask for direction, and I might not get hit. You know what I'm saying? But I got to try it a few times. That's just kind of how I work, and I accept that about myself. More experienced people, of course, in all times and places, have practiced unsparing self-survey and criticism. For the wise have always known that no one can make much of his life until self-searching becomes a regular habit. Until he is able to admit and accept what he finds, and until he patiently and persistently tries to correct what is wrong. So there it is. That is the core of step 10. We got it all cleared away up to this point, right? So now I'm going to be going into this adventure of life, and I want to carry on without building or adding anything more to this adventure. I don't need a backpack full of stuff. I don't need all these things, right? And how am I going to continue? Well, here it is. Self-searching becomes a regular habit. I need to, and here's the interesting part, because this is where this alcoholic struggles, and that's that patience, right? Being patient with the process and persistent with the process. Mark Houston would say, discipline's the horse we ride. Well, here's the deal. Yeah, it's the horse we ride, but you know what? You're going to get kicked off that horse, and that's just how it's going to work. The key to it is get back on the horse and stay persistent and be patient, right? This is not an overnight matter. Page 94. And I love how this book is just so laid out. All these steps are so intricately woven together. So here we just got done talking about self-survey, being patient, being persistent, and then we get hit with this. On page 94, it says, when prideful, angry, jealous, anxious, or fearful, we act accordingly. And that was that. Imagine that, right? I'll tell you right now, man. I have pride, anger, jealousy, every one of those becomes a part of this adventure for me on a regular basis. Here we need to only recognize that we did act or think badly. Okay, so he's setting the stage for us to, and what would a good textbook tell you? A good textbook's going to tell you the problem, and then it's going to follow up with the solution. So here he goes. Try to visualize how we might have done better, and resolve with what? God's help. Remember, in our 3rd step, we made that decision that we're no longer going to play God. Our second step, God either was or he isn't, right? And 3, I love the sentence that we must entirely be rid of self or it kills us. And then the next sentence tells us that God makes that possible. So that statement right there, and we the agnostic, is real simple. Is how do we entirely be rid of self? God. And if we don't, what's it do? Kills us. So how does self manifest in Ernie's life? It manifests through pride. It manifests through anger, jealousy, fearfulness, right? And I have to watch for that. And when those things crop up, what do? Well, I'm supposed to visualize. So Bill uses this word visualize or vision all over the place, and it's so missed. I know for me, man, I went through this deal for over 10 years, and I never saw this before. And I suffered for so long because in my opinion, or at least in my experience, not so much opinion, 10 and 11 were just so misunderstood and mislaid out. I think if there's anything in AA that I could ever give back to this fellowship is this right here. So we try to visualize how we might have done better and resolve with God's help to carry these lessons over into tomorrow, making, of course, any amends still neglected. So he's referring back to 10, which then rolls back to 9. On page 95, he says, learning daily to spot, admit, and correct these flaws is the essence of character building and good living. So we have a vision or a pretty good picture here of what Bill is suggesting that we are to do. We are to watch. We are to, and as we watch, when prideful, angry, jealous, anxious, fearful, when all these things crop up or they come up into our lives, we are to visualize what we might have done better. So it's like, for instance, yesterday, I was on the phone with my dad, and he, instead of asking me where some things were at work, he just went out and bought new. He spent $200 and some on stuff that was sitting on the shelf less than 4 feet away from where he was working on something. And I had an opportunity, but because of this program and doing prayer and meditation in the morning and watching, I felt it right here in my chest when he started talking and sharing. I said, Dad, if you would please just give me a call. And here's what he said. Well, you're busy, and I know that you have a lot going on, and I didn't want to bother you. And because I was present, I was able to listen to what he had to say. He didn't do it on purpose. He was just trying to help. And when I heard him say that, I said, thank you. I know you're trying to help, and I really appreciate that. And that was it, because he heard what I said. I heard what he said, and boom, we moved on. I didn't have to get angry. I didn't have to go. I had an option because I felt it right here, but because I felt it right here in doing this work, I didn't go from there to a point to where I got angry and I said something and did something that I would have to turn around and make amends for. And that's the vision work, and that's the watching. So step 11. If you flip over to the next page, it's going to be 96 there. Prayer and meditation are the principal means of conscious contact with God. It's a principal means, meaning, going to meetings, you can experience conscious contact with God. Sitting down with a sponsee, reading the book, you can experience conscious contact with God. But what's Bill telling us right here? Prayer and meditation is the principal means, meaning that it is the most valuable and most important means of conscious contact with God. Page 98. If I'm going too fast, just I do kind of get rolling, and I know that my sponsor says like this. He says, we're going to go through this thing. I know it's going to feel like you're drinking from a fire hose, but just bear with me and let me know if I need to slow down. On page 98, right on the top, there is a direct link among self-examination, which we've learned in our previous steps, meditation, which we're learning today, and prayer. So self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit. When I first got into this deal, actually for the first 10, 11, 12 years of this deal, that's how I did it. I did those separately. I'd get up in the morning and I'd thank God for another day sober. I would read the 3rd step prayer and the 7th step prayer and, go into the deal and pray for everybody individually in my life. And I'd get down on my knees next to the bed and separately it produced some good stuff. I mean, there was some benefit. There was some relief. But yet I would get up, walk out the door, and man, it was on me. I'd get a phone call, and it was just like, that peacefulness and that conscious contact with God I would have in that moment of prayer in the morning was just like, boom, gone. I'm just ready to rage and punch somebody in the throat, and I was just done. Or I'd walk out in the other room, and next thing I know, I'm yelling at one of the kids because they slammed the door. Or, you following me? And it was like, all right. So then I would get in the van, and I would throw an open talk on, and okay, I'm not alone. There's crazy people just like me who just talked to God and raged and acted like a lunatic. All right, God, please help me. And then I would pray again, right? And then, something else would happen, and it would back there again. Then I'd go to a meeting, and I would experience peace and serenity for an hour. It's like, oh, yep, this is good. All right, and then I would go and get right back to the deal again. And that's kind of how my day looked in recovery. I would have brief moments to where, I would go and drink a cup of coffee with another drunk and I'd feel good. And then I'd get out of there and then I was crazy. And then I would go in and I would pray and listen to an open talk and I'd be good. Then I was crazy, right? Does that sound like emotional balance to you? Life happened and ex-wife takes off and I don't see her and the kid for a week, right? And here I am trying to get sober, laying in my bed, sober as I possibly could be sober in 11 months, laying there in the room's twirling around, right? Literally felt like I was drunk and high, man, but I was sober as the day was sober. I mean, I'm laying there, I can hear the rain coming down, the bushes out the window, and man, I was just freaking out. Had nothing. And this was the peace. This is the peace that I in my experience was missing. So what does Bill say? Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit, but when they are logically related and interwoven, the result is an unshakable foundation for life. Man. And I have this open in my 12 and 12 with my little marker in here. Part of one of our 12 prayers is we take our suggested prayers, and I read the 11th step prayer right out of the 12 and 12. And over here on this side, I got that marked right out for a reminder for me every single morning. The unshakable foundation for life is what you guys are about to see. How prayer and meditation and self-examination are all intricately woven together in this book. Something that I've never saw before. I think that is it. Nope. There's so much stuff in here, man. On page 101, it starts with, it ought to be followed by a good look at where we stand now, meaning right here, this moment, and a further look at what might happen in our lives were we able to move closer to the ideal. Well, if we did inventory the way the big book, the way the program tells us to do inventory, you would have written an ideal by now. And Bill's talking about how we get closer to that ideal. We've been trying to glimpse. Meditation is something which can always be further developed, meaning you're never going to arrive. What I'm sharing with you today is what's been developed out of continuously doing this, patiently going through the deal. I get kicked off the horse discipline, I get back on over and over and over. It has no boundaries, either width or height. Aided by such instruction and example, which we're seeing some instruction and examples, we can find it is essentially an individual adventure, meaning that I'm sharing my adventure with you. You take this work with how the book lays it out for you, and you're going on your own adventure. You know, some of the pieces that I'm going to suggest are pieces that I've learned on this journey. Now you are going to learn some of your own things on the journey. You know, my sponsor gave me the original 12 and 12 from back in 2011, and since then he's had some things change on his journey and his adventure, which him and I have talked about, and some of them I've added, and I've also added some more from my own adventure. Now you go through this deal, and you know, I pray that God reveals some things to you in your adventure. It's exciting stuff. It is really fun. Something which each one of us works out in his own way. Well, basically what I just said. But its objective is always the same: to improve our conscious contact with God, with His grace, wisdom, and love. There's another picture, right? That's a vision. What is it? What is the vision? To improve our conscious contact with God, His grace, His wisdom, and love. I mean, there's so many pieces of that. So the type of meditation that Bill had mastered is guided meditation. So like what we just read right there is a guide. And what I mean by that is, for this alcoholic, I can't just hum and quiet my mind. You know, I got a chatter of 1,000 monkeys going on in this thing, man. And some mornings I get in there and it's just, you know, and if I'm not careful, literally, I mean careful, like when the alarm goes off, man, if I don't go get the cup of coffee and get down doing the deal like that, I'm in trouble. I'm in big trouble. If I grab the phone and Facebook notification pops up and emails on there, man, and I open that thing before I do the deal, oh, I'll tell you, the mind will grab onto that stuff and it becomes a lot of work, man. 18, 20-minute prayer and meditation might turn into an hour. So I've learned for myself that I got to get right into the deal as fast as I possibly can in the morning. And that's, or it's hard. It's hard. So to be able to quiet the mind, that kind of meditation doesn't work for this guy. I need some things to guide me, like what we just read, that sentence right there. And then there's many more that we're going to look at. So probably another type of meditation that really is huge for me is they call it a mantra, meaning you repeat something in successions of threes or over and over again. And in that mantra type of meditation, that's how I take the visions that Bill gives us and some that God has guided me through and that I've crafted for my own life, and I repeat them over and over and over. Like when we started this thing, how do I quiet my mind and how do I get present? Well, I do a body scan. I pay attention. I try to feel things that are right here, right now. By feeling the air come through my nose, into my throat, into my lungs. Was I able to do that right away? Absolutely not. It was just breathing. I had to practice that over and over and over. And then I listened to things. I have stuff in my body, like my hips sore, my ears ringing. I hear a fan running over here on something, a fan running over there on something. I got a smoke alarm chirping over here. If I can feel all that stuff and I can hear all that stuff, man, I'm really stinking close to being right here, right now, right? And then I take that space and I start filling that space with things that God would have me be. And I move forward and move forward and move forward. Do you guys need a break, or do you want me to keep going?
I'm good.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I'm good too, man.
All right.
I'm good. I'm loving it.
All right.
Will you do the chatter of 1,000 monkeys one more time?
All you got to do is just...
I think everybody saying I'm good was the chatter of 1,000 monkeys.
All you got to do is just pause and listen, and you'll hear him. He didn't get that.
Yeah. I got it. It's better for you.
All right. So the first page of your guide, and I'm stressing guide. I have a bit of. I'd be honest with you. I've wrote inventory on handwritten guides and things that people create to help folks go through the work. And the reason why I've done that is opinion kills people. The best thing I can give you is my experience. And all the work and everything that you go through, oh man, I can't stress this enough. Do it out of the book, okay? All this is to help you get a picture, to get an idea, okay? That's all it is. If you go and use this to do your prayer and meditation, you're going to miss it. I'm telling you right now, you will miss it. Right here, if you read, my sponsor made a note in here. It says, never let anyone read your big book for you. We continue to use the big book because as our experience broadens, our perception of means of the words change with our increased experience. This sheet is just an aid. Your real source is the big book itself. Please don't miss that. Our pal John, he can share a little bit of his experience with that, and myself included. I'm not just picking on John because for the sake of picking on John. I do that because you have two people here that took the sheet, all right, and did it from the sheet, and we didn't get the greatest results. And then going to the book was like, oh man, look at that. So I digress. So let's go to our book. Let's go to page 83. And I want to start with one of my favorite paragraphs. I can't say I have a favorite paragraph, you know what? Because each day, every time I open it, man, I just find everyone's my favorite. I just can't help it. Because it's like coming home, man. When I sit here and read a paragraph that talks about somebody being like a tornado, it's just like, dang, man, did this guy follow me around or what? But anyway, on the bottom of page 82, it says, the alcoholic is like a tornado, roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead. Affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. Man, you know, that was my house when I was sober. I created more damage sober than I did in active addiction. Because at least in active addiction, I was drunk, numb, and happy. Or at least so I thought I was.
Really?
I was just muted right out, man. When you take that out of the mix, holy cow. Yeah, it was like, I was like a, yeah. That was it, man. I smashed it all. I ruined it. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. Well, there it was. I was sober and I was crazier than I was before. He is like, this is awesome. He is like the farmer who came out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarked, "Didn't see anything. Didn't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?" Yep, that's me. Right? My wages are garnished. I can't pay a bill. Every penny of my paycheck is gone. Oh, man. And I'm just like, man, ain't life grand? This is awesome. Yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. And if you're a big book writer, when I work with guys, I have them circle all the must, all the conditional and action statements. And here's one right here. We must take the lead. So when we're working with our family, or here we are in the aftermath of our tornado of active addiction or perhaps untreated alcoholism, whose responsibility is it to take the lead? We must. So circle that word must if you wish. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fill the bill at all. And the guys I work with understand my position on that word sorry. It's just what it says. It's just a remorseful mumbling. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it. It's interesting, huh? How often do us drunks sit down with our family and analyze the past? You know, my family, I write my sex ideal, or my ideal for relationships, and how God would have me be relational to others. Every 3 months, I sit down with my wife and we review that, and we look back. We analyze the past together, and then once a month, we sit down as a family unit, and we follow the concepts of Al-Anon in that family unit. That, you know, everybody has a right to share. They have a right to their opinion. They have the right to petition anything without any rebuke, without any chastisement, nothing. It's just a safe place. It's like, Mom, I hate you. Now, that's really bad, but our kids, that's just a metaphor. Our kids understand that if that's the way they feel, family meeting is a safe place to let it out, because they have the right to that. Because behind that, we get to talk about what brought that feeling on, and then we can make the adjustments. We now see it. Being very careful not to criticize them, that's what we just talked about. Their defects may be glaring, meaning they might have a part. They may not be just as perfect as we are, right? But the chances that our own actions are partly responsible. So here's your first prayer. And this is so good. It says, so we clean house with the family. Right? So here we are, we're cleaning house with the family. And whenever Bill uses the word ask, this is another action, so I circle the word ask. Ask is prayer. We're talking to God. We're asking God. And what are we asking God? We're actually asking God. And when do we ask Him? Each morning. Right? So here it is. There's another time reference to when are we doing this? Each morning in meditation, that our Creator show us. And what's the show? So the prayer is asking, and then the vision, right? Because we looked in the 12 and 12, and he talks about vision. So if we're going to show, how do we show something? We have to see it, right? Visualize it. Show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. All right? So if we're going so our first prayer is, God, please show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. And what does that vision look like? How are we going to visualize that? Well, what I have some of the guys, when I work with them, I have them write out, what does patience look like? Do you have somebody in your life that has been very patient? And write that down and look at that so you have a vision, because it'll be easy for me to per se know somebody who's been patient, and then I can see how they have acted in patience, and then that gives me a picture or an image of something that I can tie to what patience looks like for me to be patient. Are you with me? And then the same thing is to write down tolerance. And what is somebody in my life who has been tolerant, and what does that tolerance look like? So I have a vision of what tolerance is, and so on. You do the same thing with patience and love and kindliness, all right? And so something that I suggest if you guys are married is there's a book by it's Gary Chapman. It's the 5 Love Languages. And the 5 love languages is a tool that I use when I'm watching. And everybody has something. Like John. One of his love languages is it's not so much words of affirmation, but it's encouragement. The fact that he lights up when I share with him that he has what it takes and he can do this. It's like, boom, some shift happens inside of him. So when I do my vision work in the morning and I know that I'm going to talk to John, or he's part of my 6, or we're going to do some book work together, I visualize that. So I close my eyes and I see what patience and tolerance and kindliness and love. You see the mantra? It's patience and tolerance and kindliness and love. So when I first started this, I had to say that over and over. And what would happen is when I would say that and I would bring those pictures of those people into that vision, my tone of my voice would start to change and I'd start to relax in that place. And then I would, take it into patience and tolerance and kindness and love towards John, and words of encouragement, and you have what it takes and you matter. And then I'll move on to the next one. And I do that over and over. And referring back to the tornado, so if you look at a tornado, and of course, I'm at the center of the thing, right? So that's where all the peace and calm is. And then everything outside of it, just the further you go, right, it just kind of spreads out. So with that same picture in mind, who's the first person that you're going to see? Who's the closest one to you? That's the first person that you do your patience, tolerance, kindness, and love toward. And then the next one. So for me, I have Melissa, and then it goes Olivia, and then it goes Anthony, then it goes Ernie, then it goes Josiah, and then it just kind of goes out from there. And then for me, like today, it was you guys, because you were my next person. And then from you guys, I'm going to be running a service call later this afternoon. Then it was that person. And then from there, the next piece is the 6 that I'm going to talk to today. And then from the 6 I'm going to talk to today, I do a broad one of anyone that I may cross paths with today, patience and tolerance and kindliness and love. But the key to it that I want to stress the most to you is the vision side of it, okay? The mantra will get you in that place, but having a vision or being able to bring into your mind what patience looks like, what tolerance looks like, what kindness looks like, what love looks like, that is probably the area that I'm going to suggest you work on. So taking the time and writing out people in your life that demonstrate patience, that demonstrate kindliness, that demonstrate love, that demonstrates all those attributes, those qualities right there, so you can bring that into your mind and you can get an idea when you're working into it. Now, everyone's different. My mother is just amazing. I'm telling you, she can like have three-dimensional. She can close her eyes, go into meditation, and she can like see things in color and really just neat, cool stuff. I'm not that guy. I close my eyes, man, and it's black. And then to craft a vision or see something, I'm a feeler, right? I'm like right here kind of guy, right? It's hard to get it going on up here because again, in the beginning the chatter is just going, right? And so how does the chatter for me get quieted down? It's in the mantra. It's patience and tolerance and kindness and love over and over. And then I bring that first person into that thing and Melissa and, words of affirmation and you're beautiful and you matter and I appreciate you and thank you for everything that you do. And then I just move on to the next one, my Olivia and, receiving gifts and you're beautiful and you're worth fighting for. And I put all that stuff in there and those are the things because, when I get to, for me, it's like when I get to be patient and be kind and be tolerant and fulfill that love language for that person and then they just light up and come alive. I'm telling you right now, man, I have not felt any greater purpose in life than that. And really what happens is I get separated from the mind and I that was very selfless. And that selflessness is where significance is found for me. So there's your first prayer. Now, it's interesting, Bill follows up that prayer with, the spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. So what I just shared with you perhaps is a theory, right? But in order for you to fulfill it, you have to live it. You have to put it in practice. All right. Any questions? Good? All right, let's roll on to page 84. I don't know how much, if any of you guys have worked with the study edition big book. The study edition big book uses, like reference, this is page 84, and colon, those are the two dots. Like if you were to look at the time, it'd be like 8:10. The two dots is a colon. So you'd have 84 colon 1, because the first paragraph is a carryover from the last page, which would be colon 0, and that would be 84 colon 1. So when you look at the guide or your worksheet that you have, how it says 84 2, but we're not getting to that part. We're going ahead of it because I'm a kind of guy that I need to have a full picture. So I need to know what the person's saying before it and what the person's saying after it. Because if I just go to it, I don't know about you, but the mind will start making whatever the mind wants it to be, and I can't afford to do that because I've suffered way too long in that pattern. Wrote an inventory about it many times. So are these extravagant promises? Well, I'm sure anyone who's been around the program long enough, you've probably read the promises, and those are the results of what? Step 9, right? They're not the results of step 1. They're not the results of step 2. They're the results of step 9. Step 1 has its own promises. All you got to do is go through the doctor's opinion all the way up to 61-ish, something like that. And you'll see all kinds of promises of the first 2 steps. Page 62, somewhere right around there, right after the ABCs. Tons of promises, tons of them. Actually, if you ask me, they're probably way better than these promises right here, in my opinion. So don't sell yourself short thinking that these are it. There's way more than this. But these are the promises of step 9. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. Here's the conditional statement. They will always materialize. Circle the word if we work for them, right? So just because we read them, just because we talk about them, does it mean that they're going to materialize? No. There's work. This thought brings us, what thought is that, guys?
The work.
Of?
Step 9.
Which suggests we can continue to take personal inventory and set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. Huge statement right there. Cleaned up the past. So I believe what Bill's saying here is if you're working on making amends, you ought to be what? Doing step 10. It's imperable. Guys that I work with today, man, this is where you start. Go like this. You open the book, you say, you see those pages right there? You see what's on there? Nothing. That's what you know about recovery. Okay? So before we get moving any forward in here, we need to start here. And we go right to prayer and meditation. We start on prayer number 1. And they'll be doing these prayers as we're going through the book. Because, man, I'll tell you, the mind is one tricky, powerful thing. So, as we clean up the past, meaning here we are, we're out here making amends, we're cleaning up the past, we enter the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow into understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. I mean, how hard is that for most drunks to wrap their mind around, right? I want instant satisfaction. You mean I can't just do this and get done? No. It should continue for a lifetime. So here's prayer number 2. Continue to watch. So there's that action word again. And put a circle around watch. And I'll tell you, if there's one word in recovery that I would stress the most, that needs to be burnt into your brain, needs to be a part of your makeup, that's going to be a lifetime of work, is watching. It's the tool to being present. It's the tool to success. It's the tool to be separated from the mind. It's the tool that you have that bring you to a place to where the insides match the outside. And what are we to be watching for? We're to be watching for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. So, for me, what I've learned is I need to know what selfishness looks like for Ernie. And if I've written inventory, I got a pretty good idea. I've got some things that I have in life that are objectionable. Things that I'm entirely ready for God to take away. What does dishonesty look like? Well, again, I know what it looks like. I got done looking at it. I'm going through life now, and I'm supposed to be watching for this. And why am I watching for it? Because whenever I've been selfish in the past, I wasn't aware of it. And how was I aware of it? Well, fear, right? Selfishness and self-centeredness, we think, is the root of all our problems, right? And why and what are the results of failed self-reliance? It's fear, the book tells us, right? So wherever there's fear, I'm relying on self, and I'm going back to that decision that I need to remind myself that God either is or he isn't. And I'm done playing God. I don't get a vote in this matter. So I'm watching for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, and I take and make my big book really personal for myself. So like the word we, I cross it off and make it I. I ask God at once to remove them. So what the word ask means what? We pray. Yep. So as I'm going through the day and I'm being the watcher and I'm watching for this stuff, now that I know what selfishness looks like, dishonesty looks like, resentment looks like, and fear, I'm watching for these things. And what does he say? When these crop up, does it say they might? No, it's when. Meaning it's going to crop up. And when they crop up, a part of that my sponsor has given me has just been a huge tool for me, is watching myself physically. Okay? So for me, I feel the pressure here. I kind of, my breath, the pressure comes on my chest first. And then my shoulder right here, I get these aches in my shoulder because back here in my neck, I get tense. And when I get tense, it pulls in on the nerves and then my shoulder starts getting sore. And these are the things that I watch for, because if I can watch for how it manifests or shows up in my body physically first, then I don't have to realize it after I got crazy. And it takes time to do that, because what happens is you get angry and it's like, whoa, what am I doing getting angry? And I can stop, heart's going, chest is going, I'm like just gritting my teeth, and it's just like, holy cow. I will almost guarantee you that you were like this, gritting your teeth before you got angry. I promise. So when you watch for that first, you have a tool now. And what is that tool? You pray. You ask God to remove them. We discuss it with someone immediately. And, right, not done. And we make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. So in your prayer, it's watch. And what happens for me is when I ask God to help me to watch, to help me to be the watcher, to watch in myself and my physical being when selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear crop up, to be that watcher. And what will happen is it will be like, oh, like for me, the conversation with my dad yesterday, and that came to my mind. But what was just such a blessing, God's power in this process is I caught it when it came here before it came out the mouth. And I realized that this morning when I did this prayer that, wow, God, thank you. Thank you for helping me. Thank you for helping me see and be the watcher. And so what happened for me is I had that conversation with God this morning because I did the work the morning before. Are you with me? So, discuss it with someone immediately. Let's talk about that for a minute. When we discuss it with someone immediately, sometimes it could be the person that's in front of me right now. So as soon as I see it or I feel it, could be my wife. My tone. I'm a tone guy. My voice will get way up here, man, when I'm just getting. My kids are probably the most sensitive to the tone deal, and I can see it. So if I'm being the watcher, right, I can see it in their face. It's like, wow. So their reaction to my tone was, boom, I have to pause, right? Agitated and doubtful, but I'm pausing because I'm watching and I saw it. And who do I discuss it with? You know what, buddy? Dad's real sorry he took that tone of voice with you. What do you need from me? So who is the someone I discussed it with? Him. Doesn't always have to be, okay, wait, I'm going to come back. I got to go call my sponsor. Sometimes that's important. But if you're being the watcher and you catch it right in the beginning, sometimes it's just the person you're with to talk to. Or maybe you do go off and you're rude and disrespectful. Maybe it's the lady at the gas station and you go to the teller and you're just all wrapped up into the mind and you're being selfish and, she's trying to do 5 things at once because she's the only person on the shift and you're like, hey, come on, I need to get going. Right? You were rude and disrespectful to her. Who could be the someone? I'm really sorry. That was wrong of me to be that rude for you. How's your day going today? Thank you so much for being here for me so I could get gas. Because, I mean, heck, in the times that we live today, people to go work at a gas station, man, they're like heroes, man. I mean, you think about it, in the beginning of all this COVID stuff, I I myself understand what it's like to have to go into a customer's home, you know it? So so that person that I discuss it with was them. And sometimes it might be after when I realize it, and then that's when I can call sponsor or someone in the program and discuss it. So, okay, we discuss it with someone immediately. We make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. So sometimes the person we discuss it with is the person that we make amends right there in that process. And here's the resolution, though. Because if I'm acting in selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, that means where are my thoughts at? Me. So the resolution is my thoughts need to be turned from me to what? To someone that I can help. You see it there? So I resolutely turn my thoughts to someone I can help, and then Bill gives us a vision again. And what's the vision? Love and tolerance is my code. So this now, you see how the first prayer is intricately woven with this one in patience and tolerance and kindliness and love. Well, here's the reminder right here. So it takes us back to that place. It's not over yet. There's another and. So we got to keep reading. And I have ceased fighting anyone or anything. There's another vision, right? So what does it look like for Ernie to cease fighting anyone or anything? And there's one piece that I've missed myself for so long, and it's this: even alcohol. See, whatever I resist persists. It's a spiritual law. I resisted my alcoholism for how many years, and what did I do? I continued to get drunk. The minute that I surrendered to my innermost self, that I'm an alcoholic, and I quit fighting it, what happened? Went away. It's amazing, ain't it? So you know what happens when I cease fighting everyone, everything, even alcohol? God comes in and it goes away. It's amazing.
Hey Ernie, can I say something about that?
Yeah, I got one piece here. I'll ask you if anybody has anything. So something that I've added to is I see even alcohol or alcoholism. And what I mean by that is this: if you are working with a sponsee, you are going to be faced with alcoholism, not in yourself, but in someone else. And it's a reminder that I am not to fight alcoholism in other people. Are you with me? All right, go ahead, John.
So, yesterday or the day before, it was brought to my attention on this prayer by my sponsor that I was watching and I was going through that whole thing, but I didn't continue on with cease fighting everything and everyone. In the last 2 days, when I brought it back up, there's more of an awareness through the day of not fighting. And when I created that vision, like even with my dog yesterday, she wanted to jump up on me and get pet. And she was wet, and instead of me like kicking her down and shoving her, I was like, well, we cease fighting everything and anyone. So I just kind of gently put her down and pet her, instead of kicking the dog and swearing at her. But that anything and everyone really helps big time with that thing too. That's all I got.
Don't forget that last part.
Writing that down.
Don't forget that last part, though. Even alcohol or alcoholism, because that's a reminder that we are to have every single day that A, we are alcoholics, and B, that if we're working with other alcoholics in our lives, that we are faced with alcoholism every single day. And I'm not to fight that thing. Does anybody have any questions so far?
That last statement for me is one of the sources of my to cease fighting anything and everyone. I think that's pretty blatantly obvious, but for me, it needed to be noted, so I wrote that down as well.
Well, here's what Bill tells us after that. For by this time, sanity will have returned. Isn't that something? So when we become the watcher and we watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, we cease fighting everyone, everything, even alcohol, sanity will have returned. Because we're no longer identifying with the mind. You know, a little bit about the mind is for myself, there's two things here. I have the mind and I have Ernie. Okay, the mind for me is the ego. It's Eckhart Tolle says the ego is the mind-made sense of self. I'll say that again. Mind-made sense of self. And really, I missed a pretty big part in that, is it's a false mind-made sense of self. It's not real. That's the ego. It's not my ego, because I'm not the ego. The ego is separate from me. I'm Ernie. Where is Ernie found? Ernie is found in that state of being what God would have for me. And this is what prayer and meditation does, is it separates you from the mind. And what you're doing is you're retraining that mind. And how are we doing it? We're doing it in a way of being and going after what God would have. And that's where the true sense of self is found, in selflessness. The mind demands all. All the mind, the ego does is three things. It separates me from you, separates me from myself, and separates me from God. So if you're experiencing separation, it's the ego. And how do you get separated from that? Well, this right here. All right, my sponsor gives the picture of a vacuum cleaner. And I don't know if you've in vacuuming, for me, I got a large basement and upstairs, and my vacuum, I plug it in, and you get going across the room and you get to the other corner and you got like 2 foot left you got to get to, and the cord's at the end. That's about how I can get going through life, right? I'm right at the end, man. I just got to get them 2 feet, and I push it, and boom, the vacuum comes unplugged, right? And at that point, as I'm being the watcher, I have to watch for when I get unplugged. And when I'm getting unplugged, that's where the selfishness, the dishonesty, and the resentment and the fear crop up, okay? And I have a choice right there. What am I going to plug into? Am I going to plug into that mind-made false sense of self, the ego? Or am I going to plug back into God and get back to being what He would have me be? Are you with me? So being that watcher allows us to have a choice in that place of separation. And in the beginning, it can be really uncomfortable. Trust me, going through life for me, having identified with the mind for so many years, I thought that's who I was. The ego had me so fooled that if I move away from this, I'm going to lose myself. And essentially, truly, that's what happens. What do you lose? You lose the mind-made false sense of self, because that's not who you are. You find true significance in self-sacrifice and working with others. Bill tells us that over and over in this book, at least 3 times, right? Sense of self comes in being patient, being tolerant, being kind, being loving. And when you do that, and the more you do that, the more separation there will be. And I'll tell you, it's uncomfortable, and that's okay. Spiritual growth and moving from letting go is not a comfortable deal. But that's why we have to be persistent. That's why we have to be patient. I've seen multiple people go through this process with prayer and meditation, and they get up to this prayer right here, and they get to the review questions, and they freak out. And how is that? It's because they start to sense some separation from the ego and start to find a true sense of self, and it is scary. It's not, but this is where we have to trust God. You have to trust. The guys I work with, we do, in the second step, they write out their own conception of God. So when they start freaking out, when we get to this process, I say, wait a minute, what is your conception of God? Oh, your God is what? Faithful? Your God is kind? Your God is patient? Your God is loving? So why aren't you trusting him now? Oh, because we're spending time with the ego again, and we're starting to believe the lies. Are you with me? All right. So we are seldom interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react. Now here's the promises. These are the promises of being the watcher. Okay? A, we recoil from alcohol as if from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally. We will find this happens automatically. How is that? Because I'm not fighting anyone or anything, right? I'm done. Who's running the show? Not me. God's the one running the show now. I'm just sitting back. I'm being the watcher. And I have tools, so when these crop up, I ask him to remove it. We'll see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. Ain't that something? Right? How many times we try to cure the drink problem. And again, when we surrender and we let go, man, it's that paradox. Beyond our wildest dreams, right? It just comes. That is the miracle of it. Here we go. Here it is again. We are not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality. Wow. Again, I'm just kind of, last night in our meeting, we were talking about acceptance, and the vision that God gave me for acceptance was in a river that had a strong current. And when I'm operating in self, I'm swimming upstream. And when I'm swimming upstream, do you know what I get to look at? The same dang rock, the same trees, the same bend, the same stuff, because I'm stuck in one place. But what happens when I just let go? And I let the river take me downstream? It becomes an adventure. It becomes fun. I see new rocks. I see new trees. I see animals. I see all kinds of stuff. Because what? I relax. I take it easy. I don't fight. And the thing takes me on an adventure. And you know, it's fun. It is fun. We are God's kids. We are in this world to play the roles he assigns. And what is that? You ever see kids at a playground play? Ask them what time it is. They don't know. Kids have no idea of a concept of time. It's tomorrow or it's yesterday every day, right? It's 4 o'clock every day, right? And that's what we're supposed to be. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky or afraid. That's a good sentence. I underline that word cocky because I don't know about you. That way when things get going, I start taking credit. I got to be careful of that. That's spiritual pride. This is our experience. That is how we react as long as we keep in spiritual and fit spiritual condition. Think, how do we stay fit? Man, we go to the gym, we exercise, we go through a process, we work out, we do things. And when we exercise, we become fit. This is not an overnight matter. This is something that we have to practice daily. So right here, so far, we've gotten 2 exercises that we can do to become more spiritually fit. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We all do it. This is the whole purpose of Steel on Steel, guys, is on a weekly basis, we get a reminder of what spiritual, we got to go to the gym. We got to do our spiritual exercises. If we don't, we're resting on our laurels. We are heading for trouble. If we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe, meaning behind every piece of agnosticism. And what I mean by agnosticism is where I believe God is, okay? But yet I'm still going to manage my business. You with me? So behind me managing the business is what? A drink. I can never forget that. That's why I have to underline and be reminded that not only am I not fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, I have to be reminded of that every single morning, knowing behind every piece of self is a drink. Wherever I'm saying that I believe in God, but I'm going to continue to manage, that's my current agnosticism, and that's what's going to take me to that next drink. And I know it, because for me, I have no mental defense against the first drink. What protection do I have against that strange mental blank spot? I got to go to the spiritual gym. I got to work out every single morning in preparation for that strange mental blank spot, because I've had them. And I've swore that I was never going to get drunk. I was never going to drink again. And I had no idea how I ended up at that house with a 6-pack of Corona. And you know how it happened? I asked, why did I only get 6? I don't even remember getting them. Yeah. Drove by the store, must have got a pack of cigarettes, and I'm telling you right now, I don't remember buying the booze. Scary stuff, and I can never forget it. Never. I got to be reminded every day. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. All right? So here we go. This is our next one. When do we do this? Every day. Every day is a day when I must carry a vision of God's will into all my activities. So far, what kind of vision have we put together? A vision of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. So, and when do we do it? Every day. And there's a word in there. Did you guys catch the action word? Is this something that we get to do or must? Yeah, there we go. So anybody who says this is a suggested, the actual working of the steps, the process of doing and living this is suggested, is not. That's how can you suggest something and then tell somebody they must? It's impossible. The book, meaning this book itself, is suggestive only, meaning, hey, if you got a problem with alcohol, I suggest you read this book. But doing what's inside of the book is not suggested. If you're an alcoholic, you've experienced phenomenon of craving, you must, or it kills you, right? We're in step 2 and how it works. Probably one of the most we read it at every meeting, right? And the chapter is exactly what it says, how it works. But most people don't even understand that that's step 2. Right at the end it says, A, we believe we're alcoholics. B, that probably no human power could relieve our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. Right? And what do we say? It's progress, not perfection. Really? That's just the mind giving you a way out to not do the must. Are you following me? What we're talking about, what Bill meant in that statement, if there's anything that I could argue with him about if he was still alive, would probably be that. And it's taken out of context. In context, progress, not perfection, we're talking about your relationship with God. We're talking about step 2, coming to believe in a power greater than yourself. That is always going to progress. You'll never perfect it. He tells us that. It's impossible for us to fully understand and comprehend God. It just doesn't happen. And that's something that I need to be reminded of, because I want to define it. I want to put it on the wall. I want to label. And perhaps maybe the word God itself is the one thing that stands in the way of us experiencing him. Can you define God? No. And Bill even tells us that. So it's going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to progress. We're going to progress in our understanding of God. We'll never perfect it. That's what that means. Now, to take that statement and put it into step 3 is suicide. To take that statement and put it in step 4 when it says a fearless, moral, searching inventory of our lives. Well, am I just going to progress and perfect that? When it says we're supposed to be honest and thorough, doesn't fit. Suicide. Am I supposed to progress and perfect entirely being ready to have God remove them? That's suicide. It's either you're ready or you're not. It's that simple. And if you're not, you ask God for the willingness. Doesn't fit. You guys with me? Oh, I digress. I'll quit beating that horse. I just, here's why I just get so passionate about those things is because I suffered with believing those statements for so many years in recovery. And man, I'm telling you, if we just took the book for what it said, so many more people would get free and be doing this life beyond their wildest dreams, as the book tells us. I mean, God would have us to be happy, joyous, and free. So every day we must carry a vision of God's will into all our activities. And that vision is patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. And we're to do it in all of our activities. And this is the prayer. So the vision is the patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. And the prayer is, how can I best serve thee? Thy will be done. Okay? This is the spot check. So for me, what I do with this one is before we started this meeting, it was I have a vision crafted. I've been doing this for a little bit, so my vision is a little more in detail than just patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. But I've closed my eyes and I see myself being patient, being tolerant, being kind, being loving toward you guys. And it's, how can I best serve thee? Thy will be done. This meeting is not my meeting. This meeting is God's meeting. This study is God's meeting, not Ernie's. And I'm to be patient, tolerant, kindly, loving, a good listener, being thoughtful, being caring, being enlightened, being present, being available, being a watcher. These are all things that I've crafted a vision that I am to carry into what? All my activities. So I spot check. So I run a service call. I go to a customer's house. Before I ring the doorbell and I'm standing on the porch, there's a couple things I do. I take myself to this vision. I see it. It's, how can I best serve thee? Thy will be done. And I pray for his protection and care to cover me when I go into that house, to protect me against COVID. And I carry that into that home. Because I could get into that house and very easily have somebody coughing in the other room. I had this happen. I was in a house working on a dryer, and there was some kids in a bedroom right down the hallway. And, man, they were just hacking their lungs out. And immediately, man, I was crippled with fear. And it scared me. And because of Steel on Steel and this work, I shared this with the group. And they were like, is it possible for you to craft a vision of God's protection for you when you go into these homes? So where do I apply that vision? Right here in my spot check before every activity. Okay? Any questions? I know it's a lot, guys. I mean, we're only on, I think this is 3. Okay? Let's keep going. These are the thoughts which, oh boy, here's another one of those musts, right? These are the thoughts which must go with us constantly. So how often do they go with us? Constantly. When do we do it? Before every activity. We can exercise our will along this line as we wish. It is the proper use of the will. Think of that. For how many years have we fought self-will? Self-will run riot, right? Isn't that what the book tells us? Well, now I get to properly use that will. And I take my will and I align it with God's will. And how do I do that? Crafting a vision, okay? And carrying that vision into all my activities. That's the proper use of the will. And that thought has to go with me constantly. So you can see so far as we go, I mean, this stuff is like way super intense, and there's so much of it. It's like, oh, I don't know about you, but man, when I first went, my head was just blown off. Like, oh my gosh, I mean, how am I going to remember all this? How am I going to do all this? This is just so much. And this is why, you know, my sponsor in his experience has experienced the fact that you do the one a week, okay? And you can see how one a week is just a big deal. And we'll go through all of this, and then each Tuesday after our Steel on Steel meeting, we'll talk about one. All right? So we can, you know, rehatch and review it, and then we can work on it all week long, and then the following Tuesday we can talk about, you know, the results of practicing that. And hey, man, I noticed this or I noticed that, and then we can talk about the next one for the following week, and that it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Okay, this is getting to the meat and potatoes of it right here. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge, all power. Think of that. I don't know if any of you guys are working on your second step questions, but right there's a pretty good attribute of God. Here we go. There's another condition. Get ready to circle the if. If we have carefully, I would put hyphens, lines, whatever you got to do to make that word carefully come out of that page and burn into your forehead. If we have carefully followed directions, what are the directions? This book. And we are to carefully follow directions. When we started this, what did I say? I said we want to follow these worksheets, don't we? How are we? Are the worksheets the directions? No. They're just a guide. The directions are the book, and we are to carefully follow them. We have begun to sense the flow of the Spirit into us. That's a promise. To some extent, we have become God conscious. So our God consciousness comes from this work. Prayer and meditation. Remember, we read it out of the 12 and 12. What is the principal means to conscious contact with God? And here it is. So I see how the 12 and 12 kind of expounded on, broadened and deepened the idea, but right here, Bill tells us how to do it. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. Oh boy, here it is again. But we must go further, and that means more action. So there's your crash course on step 10 out of the big book. It's a lot. I don't think I've ever sat in an AA meeting and ever heard anything like that in all of my experience in recovery. And that is the process that we are to continue to take personal inventory. And when we're wrong, we promptly admit it. And that's that part of continue. So step 11. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We should not be shy on this matter of prayer, but men better men than we are using it constantly. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. Anyone besides John, tell me where the big book gives us the proper attitude. All right, I'll pick on John.
Wow, dude. Seriously.
Tell me, John, where's it at?
55-4.
All right. So let's go there. Actually, before we go there, what I would like you to do is I'd like you to underline proper and circle the word attitude and write a reference of 55:4 in your book right there. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to go there and read it for you so so we can keep rolling. So 55:4. I'll read the whole paragraph. So we can only clear ground a bit if our testimony helps you to sweep away prejudice. Okay, so there's number one, sweep away prejudice. Enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourselves. So one, sweep away prejudice. Two, search diligently within yourself. Then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. There it is. So what's the attitude that can't fail? One that sweeps away prejudice and search diligently within himself. And for those nerds that are with us, if you go to the back of the book in the appendix 2, maybe? No, yep. Appendix 2, I can never read that proper attitude without this reminder that Bill puts in here on page 568. There's a principle which is bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. Are you ready? The principle is contempt prior to investigation. If you look at the word contempt, it means judgment or prejudice. So when we started this meeting, I did the set aside prayer. See, I don't have the power. I need God to come in and set aside those things that are within me that I think I know about you, about him, and about this process. Okay? Because what I've learned from writing inventory, it's all those labels and all those judgments that block me from consciously being aware or connected with him. In my experience, I believe that when I was born as a child, I had no label. I had no judgment. I had nothing in my life that blocked me from being present and experiencing God's conscious contact. Now, as I grew up in life, I was told I had a dad. And the minute that I got that label dad or father, that stopped my experience of having a father. Why? Because you think about it. The minute that I say dad, we think that dad should be what? There. Dad should be this. Dad should be that, right? All those things that we were told a dad is supposed to be. Or how about a boss, right? We put the label boss on somebody. Well, a boss is supposed to be a good leader. A boss is supposed to be this. So it's all those. It's the labels. It's the ideas. The things that I think I know, right? Oh, I know what religion is. Do I? I know who God is. Do I? I mean, the minute I put the label God on this supreme being, the underlying totality of all creation, I've ended it. I can't fully comprehend and understand God. So there I go. I say I can't fully understand, comprehend God, or how about this power that's greater than me? Right? I can tell you about how this power has moved and worked in my life. Right? So I have to set all that stuff aside, all the things that I think I know. All that's blocking me. And then when the new experience comes in, it's just like, oh, wow, yeah. So that's the proper attitude. That's the place that we were supposed to be. So on one of your worksheets, I did a one full sheet for the review questions. And then I sent you one that was just this for your big book. So the one that's just for your big book, I take scissors and I cut it out, and it fits right in the book, and it lives in there. All right? And this is why there's 12 review questions. And before I do these review questions, because if the problem centers in my mind, and if the things that block me are the things that I think I know, I need God to take that stuff away. And I need His help. I need His aid. Because how do we entirely be rid of self? By His aid, not me. So I go to prayer. And I ask God to set aside the things that I think I know about Him, about you, about myself, about this process. Okay? And there's a thing that I'm going to just warn you on, is I add just long enough to have a new experience. I will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. So the experiences that I've had with God are detrimental to my being today. Okay? I would be too afraid, you hear that? Healthy fear, be too afraid that I would forget about all the great things that God has given me. So when I'm asking God to set things aside, I want Him to set them aside just long enough. He determines how long that is. He's the one who's setting them aside just long enough for me to have a new experience. And then that new experience just builds on the next. Are you following me?
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you have, I have a study edition of the book. They also have another, actually, I had a guy at a talk that I gave me the original manuscript of the big book and how it was all written and edited in. I'm a nerd, man. I love this study. I love details, and I'm learning to enjoy that about myself. It doesn't matter what you think. What really matters is what I think about you. And so many times in my life, because God crafted me this way, I look down on myself for that. And today, I'm grateful for it, because it's just really allowed me to be a better person in the qualities that He's given me. It's no longer, it's a tool. It's an asset, not a liability no more. And that happens by the grace of God. So the original manuscript, if we were to look at your 86:1, it says the big book itself says, when we retire at night. I'm old school, hardcore, first 100 alcoholics, this is how the deal worked, this is how the dudes got free kind of guy, all right? The original manuscript says this: when you awake tomorrow morning. When is it again? The morning. I mean, think about this. The editor of the big book had changed this, and he changed it when you retire at night. How contradicting is that? So far, everything we've done is when?
Morning.
Yeah, right? So now what are we doing at night? So for me, I stick to the original manuscript that says, when you awake tomorrow morning. Just a little side note. So for me, I do the review questions in the morning. Now, this is what I've learned over time. some people struggle to remember. They have in the beginning, as you're practicing prayer and meditation, and you're getting separated from the mind and finding true purpose in that state of being, it can be difficult to remember through the day, because when we're asleep, dreaming we're awake, going through life, sometimes it's hard to recall these things. So a good tool that someone that I have worked with suggests is there's an app. I don't know the exact name of the app, but there's an app that you can use for review questions, and you can put it on your phone. So as you go through the day, if something crops up and you see it, you can make a note of it. So then the next morning when you go in to do your review questions, if you choose to do them in the morning, you'll have some notes or some reminders of some points of the day for you to meditate on after you've asked God to sweep away prejudice. And you ask God to show you the truth and give you the proper attitude. Are you guys with me? Okay. So in the morning time, these are the questions I ask myself. Was I resentful? And for me, was I resentful is this. In that place in the morning, in my spot, do I have anything going through my mind that happened yesterday that has an emotional charge connected to it? This is tough. And the reason why this is tough is because if we've let any time go in between our last inventory and making amends, there might be a lot of stuff right here, okay? Which is fine. Just make sure you work with your sponsor and you get the stuff cleaned up. But the key to it is resentment, meaning I'm reliving some event from the past, could even be an hour ago, but 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever. If I'm reliving that and there's an emotional charge connected to it, meaning that I'm not at peace, then I write it down. Okay? So when you get into these review questions, it's imperative to have a notebook. That's all this is for me. These are all notes. I have April, sex ideal, Karen, thank you. And these are things that I write down. So if I have something that I'm reliving in the past, then I write that down, okay? And then I move on. Was I selfish? My guys that I work with, they have this. This is their fear tool. The big book gives us a fear tool. We write down the core fear, and then on the opposite of that, we write down what God would have us be, okay? So when I find that I've been selfish, the correction of the things is the purpose of review questions. As you guys know in Steel on Steel, are you correcting all your discrepancies? This is where you find the discrepancies, is right here. So I got to find, have I been selfish? Well, if I've been a good watcher, okay, I would have seen some of my selfishness. And then you identify it. So what do? We identify the underlying fear, and we use the two-part fear tool. So what I'll do is, yesterday was a pretty clean day for me. I could not identify anywhere that I was being selfish. But let's say that I had a fear of pain. So what I would do at that point is I would say, yup, I was afraid of pain. And what would God have me be instead of in pain? God would have me relax, take it easy. How can I best serve thee? Being loving, being kind, being tolerant toward God and all his kids. So I correct it right there. I use my fear tool. This fear tool, it should be in your wallet, should be in your car, and you should have a copy in your big book. It's that part of watching. When you're watching and all those things crop up, how do we see them usually first is the fear, right? And how do we outgrow the fear? Well, we ask God to remove it at once, and we get to being what he would have. Next one, was I dishonest? If I was dishonest with anyone, even myself, that means there's an amend that needs to be made. Write it down. So if I was dishonest, boom, goes on the piece of paper. And I move to the next one. Was I afraid? Identify the underlying fear and use your 2-part fear tool again. Do I owe an apology or a thank you? And see, the facilitation of these processes as I'm going through, I might be getting a little more awake, a little more vulnerable to what was really going on yesterday when I was looking at that day. And, do I owe an apology? Because I'm reiterating, I need things repeated, right? Was I dishonest? Then there's an amends. Well, then wait, I just wrote someone down. Okay, yes, I do owe an apology. Good. Double check, because I don't know about you, but this mind is one crafty thing. I need this to stay clean and present. I can't afford any spiritual plaque, because it's all those things that build back up, and it's just like, gosh, why am I always writing a 4-step? Why am I always this? Right? Remember we talked about it in the beginning? We get in prayer and meditation, and we go out, and the crap gets on our back, and we start acting like idiots again. It's because there's just so much. The whole purpose of this thing is to get hollowed out, right? I'm to be a hollow bone, man. God's just going to flow in, and he's going to what? He's going to demonstrate through me what he can do. That's our fear tool again, right? We ask God to remove it at once. We get to being. Stay hollow. God moves through me. He demonstrates what he can do. Number 5, we do the thank you. Okay, so this is something that I've added. And so many times I go through the day and somebody does something nice for me. And this is even back to making amends. So one of my sponsors, his sponsor's wife, when he was talking about amends, she, from Al-Anon, amazing Al-Anon program, she talked about it's not all making amends for harms done. Perhaps do you owe somebody a thank you? You ever do something for somebody before and they never said thank you? Is it possible that you could create a harm by not acknowledging something somebody did for you? Okay? So that's why I added this. As you go through the day, so for me, what it was is I did an interview with someone, and she came in, and this is COVID time, and when she came in, I forgot to tell her thank you. So I wrote that down. Number 6, have I kept something to myself which should have been discussed with another person at once? Now, I don't know about you, but every now and then I get crazy stuff that pops into my mind. I might be driving down the road and there's, this is the season for half naked running around things. And I don't know about you, but I think stretchy pants should be against the law. And every now and then, man, I'm a one look kind of guy. Okay, I'm a man, and she comes by and it's like, oh, okay, nope, and I keep going. Where I get in trouble is when I go for a second look. Okay, these are the things that I can't afford. So right here is a tool that I have. Did I look twice? Did I look 3 times? Did I go any further than I should have? And this could be anything besides this, but I need this. So if I did, I write it down. Okay, you following with me? All this writing down stuff? You got to have a pen and paper. You got to write this stuff down. And if so, make plans to make an amend today. Well, in that case, who did I harm? If I'm looking at this female running by, did I harm her? No. I caused harm to myself. So how do I make plans for that amend today? It's like, no. So what I do, I spend time in meditation. That's not who you are. There is no satisfaction in that. If you take that look past that 3rd or 4th look and you start crafting the delusion in your mind, because this is all the ego. The ego was what took the second look, okay? And the ego is going to start with the fantasies, and they're going to start pulling me away. And what is it doing? Remember we talked about it. What does the ego do? Causes separation, right? And that thing is causing separation between me, that person, and God. So it's back to being the watcher. Are you with me? But I have to tell people. I have to tell people about it. If I don't, I'm in trouble. Was I kind toward all? If not, make plans to make an amend, because it means if I wasn't kind, I caused the harm. Write it down. Was I loving toward all? Same deal. If I wasn't loving, I caused the harm. Write it down. What could I have done better? Okay, so here's the correcting. So what could I have done better? So now that I've seen, perhaps it was a situation with Melissa, and I wasn't tolerant. Okay, and we talked about this this Tuesday, and so what I have to do is I have to say, okay, if I'm in this situation, what could I have done differently? I'm a breather, okay? So I take a deep breath, and she sees it. Sometimes it irritates her. Why are you taking a deep breath? It's like, I need to. Because when I take a deep breath and I do a 3 count in my mind, that allows me to pause just enough so I can be, what can I do for you? Do you need something? Right? And that's the correcting. Because generally, if I'm not tolerant, I'm wrapped up into my plans and the things that I need, and I'm going, and what am I doing? I'm identifying with the mind, the ego again. It's my plans, right? I'm not being present, not being thoughtful. And again, so there's some more pieces that you can add to that correction. Correcting these things is just, that's where you get to become the new you. This is where you're going to find the 2.0 version of that new creation that God is making every day. Number 10, was I thinking of myself most of the time? Make a vision of what it looks like for you to be selfless. Which you got some of that already, right? Patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. And we're to what? Carry a vision of real purpose. Where did we talk about that? We talked about carrying that vision into all our activities, right? This is just it's taking you back to that point, because now we are looking at all the places of self, right? And all these things that have went about, and now there's a time for us to correct those things and perhaps maybe craft a new vision or tweak the vision that we already have. 11, was I thinking of what I could do for others? If no, create a vision of what that would look like. You had already seen where you were resentful, selfish, dishonest, afraid, all those parts and pieces, and now it's time for you to correct those things. So if you have stuff wrote down on a paper, you can refer back to what you've wrote on that paper, and you can make those corrections. And if you're making the corrections, what'll happen over time is you're doing the deal every single day, you'll find that, I wasn't resentful yesterday. And when I ask myself these questions, just a little side note, is if there's like nothing comes, and I'm like, was I resentful? Am I reliving anything in the past? It's like, nothing's there, and I'm good. But if there's just a little hint of a thought of something, I need to pause. I need to write it down. But what'll happen is you'll come through times and you'll feel really weird. It's like, okay, I wasn't resentful. I wasn't selfish. I wasn't afraid. And it gets to be very uncomfortable. It's like, what's going on here? Right? And that's where I have to stop, and I have to thank God. I have to be careful of spiritual pride, because God was doing something for me that I could have never done for myself. I started to by aligning my will with His will, things started to go in a way that I wasn't used to. And I can't take credit for that. And this is my reminder right here in number 11. Number 12. Was I thinking of what I could pack into the stream of life? And this is where, not only being patient, being kind, being tolerant, being loving, the big book tells us that we are the spearhead of God's ever-advancing creation. Meaning we're the tip of this thing, man. So I have to see that God's shooting me out into this deal, and I'm the spearhead of it. And what does that look like? Am I going out into this stream of life, and am I making the world a better place because I'm in it and I'm sober? And we're making a vision of what God's wanting for me. And sometimes it's hard to say, what is God wanting for me? Well, that's why I ask. That's why I meditate. That's why I watch. Big book's full of tons of things that God would have you be. It's all over in that book. We talked about a bunch of them already. If I'm forcing my will and not believing in His power, or am I depending upon God? So here's what could happen. Oh, work was really busy today. I didn't have time for this. And, I got home and I didn't spend any time with the kids. And perhaps you're overpacking the stream of life. And you're not trusting God. You're back to running the show. You see, in our Steel on Steel, when we ask those questions, you can see, hopefully some of you guys have gotten a whole different picture of why some of those questions that we answer in Steel on Steel are written in the way they are. It's to hold us accountable to doing these. So when we look at, are you doing the review questions and are you correcting all the discrepancies? Well, you had them wrote down now. Okay, so a little note about it. So if you wrote down that you were resentful, then part of your day now that you're planning, well, we'll get to that. I don't want to get ahead of things. So from my experience, I'm going to share a little bit of God as I understand Him. I believe that Jesus Christ is my Savior, and that when Jesus died on the cross, He said it is finished. And that my sins are cast as far as the east is from the west. That Jesus Christ had faith in God His Father to not leave Him down in the pits of hell. And by the faith and work of Christ is how I am free. It's not my work. I don't have the strength, the power. I have nothing. It's by Him and Him only. AA taught me that God either is or He isn't. Anytime that Ernie's had a part in the matter, from writing inventory in my experience, it's been a mess. It's whenever I relax and take it easy, things just happen exactly the way they're supposed to be. I flow with the river. And I believe that I was born with everything. I have an infinite God. I mean, everything was done. Everything was provided. It was all there the minute that I sucked air in this universe. And that it's always been there. And AA has taken me through a process of uncovering, discovering, and discarding. And that's the process. It's uncovering the things that are blocking me. I discover it and I discard it. All by the work of God. Nothing to do with me. So when it comes so I thank God. I don't ask God for forgiveness because I can't ask God, as I understand Him, to do something He's already done. It's finished. He's done the work. All I got to do is accept it. All I got to do is thank Him for it. And that's why I thank God that I'm forgiven. It's by forgiving that one is forgiven. So who did the forgiving first? For me, God forgave me first. Before I even asked Him, it was done. And by that, I'm forgiven. And that gives me the opportunity then, because of His work, to give forth all of me and that I have done, or who I am, because it's there. That's where I find true freedom and true happiness, is the fact that I had no part in this thing. He did it. It's finished. It's over. And that's why number 2 under 12 is I thank God that I'm forgiven and that I have an infinite God. I trust God. I put a reference in there, 68:2. Because he forgave us, we are free. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. God forgave me first, which then I can do the same. So meditate on number three. Meditate on what corrective action should be taken and make a vision to prevent these things from happening again. So this is review. What you do then is you go back to the things you wrote down and you see, okay, I was resentful. So now I make plans. I see myself. I craft a vision of, okay, when I get home at 10 o'clock or sometimes right after I'm done doing my prayer and meditation, I'll have time and I'll sit down and I'll write a 4-column inventory, a forgiveness prayer. And if I'm resentful, at this point in time, if I use the resentment tool that we already talked about, is when this crop up, right? I ask them to remove it at once, discuss it with someone immediately. I make amends. I resolutely turn my thoughts to someone I can help. I cease fighting everyone, everything, even alcohol or alcoholism. And if it still comes back, then there's something deeper there that I'm not seeing. And I sign myself up for a 4-column inventory. Forgiveness prayer is just imperative as well. So that becomes part of my day ahead. I plan it in there and I see it. Now, if I owe an amends, I plan it in the day. I see myself. I set the time. It's like, okay, I owe Karen a thank you. So as soon as I get to my van and I'm heading to my next stop, I'm going to send her a text message and I'm going to tell her thank you for coming in for the interview. You following me? And making those corrections. It's so important. One thing to identify them, which you'll find so many people who do the review questions are really good at identifying the problem. I mean, this alcoholic here, I'm good at seeing the problem, right? My problem is I wasn't good at the solution. I wasn't good at following through with the correction. And please, if I could stress anything more about these review questions is A, write down any discrepancies. B, go back through and create the visions and make the plans to follow through with the correction. You have to see it. My sponsor, he would get me so many times and reminding me, well, why didn't you write that inventory? Why didn't you call your 6? Why didn't you follow through? Why didn't that happen, Ernie? I don't know. Why? Did you create a vision of seeing yourself making that amend today? Did you create a vision of setting the time aside to write that inventory and that forgiveness prayer? Did you create a vision? Are you guys following with me? You with me on that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that is your review questions. And having a small piece then, having this small one cut out in your big book, you can use that as your guide, because getting back to our book, the book says we constructively review our day. Were we resentful? 1. Selfish? 2. Dishonest? 3. Or afraid? 4. Do we owe an apology or a thank you? 5. Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with some person at once? 6. Were we kind? 7. Were we loving? 8. Toward all. What could we have done better? My dog. Was I thinking of myself most of the time? 10. Was I thinking of what I could do for others? 11. What could I pack into the stream of life? 12. Here we go. We're going to get into some fun stuff again. But what? What's the word? Must be careful not to drift into underlying worry, underlying remorse, and underlying or morbid reflection. Do you know what worry, remorse, and morbid reflection is? Those are symptoms of the ego, symptoms of the mind. So what is worry? Worry is the mind taking you out into the future about something that's not here yet. Okay? Remorse is the mind taking you back to something that happened in the past. Okay? What did we just get done doing? We got done crafting a vision for today. We got done reviewing the things that needed to be corrected from the past, and we have to be careful. And Bill really stresses it. We must be careful to not drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. I don't know about you guys, but holy cow, worry, remorse, and morbid reflection. Yeah, that mind-made sense of self loves to hang out in that place all the time. It's how it controlled me. Talk about being driven by 100 forms of fear. It's like, throw me in the trunk of the car and take me wherever you will, because I don't have a choice, and it's dark in here and I can feel things moving, but I don't have a choice. Being driven. For that would diminish the usefulness to others. After making a review, ask God for forgiveness. And for me, in my experience, I thank God that He forgave me. The work is done. I'm not going to put Him back up on that cross, man. He said it's finished. It's over. I'm free. I'm forgiven. All I got to do is accept it and walk in that forgiveness. And inquire what corrective measures should be taken. That's that vision. That's those corrections we talked about. So basically, I took you on a very detailed course, and then we just read it out of the book. But could you imagine just reading it out of the book? Would you get the idea of what the 12 review questions are and how you go about correcting them? So that's why I have this in there. And after a while, after you use this and you follow through the book with using that to ask the questions and do the corrections, for me, it just becomes, it doesn't take as long. You know, I mean, a lot of this is like, oh my gosh, man, I'm going to have to set the alarm for 4 o'clock in the morning to get this stuff done. I know it's a lot, but I promise you, I mean, if you're in a hurry, you could hit every one of these principles and really craft some good direction in about 18, 20 minutes. If you're really in a place to where you're really getting into some detail and you're liking the results and you want to push forth, I mean, I'm like a 35 minute kind of guy is about what it takes me. And that's writing things out, giving myself time if I end up writing a 4-column inventory. I just need, for me, I'm the kind of person, I just got to get that stuff done. And I got to pay attention to that detail. I like to be free, man. I don't like to hurt people. It's not what God would have me be. So that's corrective measures should be taken. All right. You guys need a break, or you want to keep going?
I gotta hit the head.
All right. So let's do let's back here at let's say 11:20. Sound good? It's 11:16 right now.
Yep, that'll work.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. So we finished our review questions, and we're at our next prayer. We consider the plans for the day before we begin, which we wrote down all our things that needed to be done, and we made plans for the day in those corrected visions, what we're going to pack into the stream of life, you know, what God would have for us, any amends if we need to make them, right in the 4-column inventory, forgiveness prayer. Those are the plans for the day. And if you have work, you have whatever, these are the things that this is the position that we're in so far. So we ask God. We ask God to direct our thinking. Now, in the beginning, we asked God to direct our thinking to what? What are we thinking about here? We're thinking about the day. Or we're thinking about the 24 hours ahead. And when I first got sober, that's or even this process, that's what I had to focus on, right? Just for today, right? How many times we hear that? Or I only have to not drink when? Today, right? So when we first start this deal, we focus on the 24 hours. Well, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you to move beyond the 24 hours and ask God to direct your thinking to the now. Because if we're going to be the watcher, where do we watch? Right here, right now. Right? We don't, there's no morbid reflection. We're not to be remorseful. We're not to worry. We're to be here, right now, present. So that prayer then is ask God to direct my thinking to the now. Next one, especially asking that it be divorced. What be divorced? My thinking. My thinking is to be divorced of what? Self-pity, selfishness, self-seeking, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. I put all those in there. I think, what's the book say? Ask that it be divorced of self-pity, dishonesty, or self-seeking motives. I add all the other ones just because I'm a pretty troubled child. And here we go. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. For after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. So who's doing the work here? God is. Because we're doing what? We're asking Him to direct our thinking to the now, and we're asking Him to divorce that thinking of any selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Don't forget the self-pity, because I don't know about you, but this alcoholic can run off into self-pity really fast, because as you become the watcher and you fail, because you see yourself fail and you know better, what's the result? Oh, I should have known better. Why did I do that? Oh, I failed. That's self-pity. No. That stuff's got to go, man. And that power, God, is going to do this for you. He's going to straighten this out. And you're going to direct your thinking, right? Or He's going to direct your thinking. And when He does that, our mental faculties, meaning that our thinking now is going to be on a higher plane. It's not going to be all wrapped up into self. It's going to be where? In those visions of being patient, of being kind, being tolerant, being loving, being a watcher. Are you with me? That's where we're to be. And we need His power to get rid of that and direct it to those visions that we've crafted. Those are those mental faculties. And God gave you a brain, right? I mean, that mind of reason for so many years has been a liability. But now with prayer and meditation, you have the opportunity to have it become an asset. Think before you act. Think, right? And with God's help, that thinking now is on a higher plane. And you know what He would have you be. So what do we do? This is so awesome. You see how this is going to move into the next place? What do? We ask Him for inspiration. The next prayer, down here at the bottom. Here we ask God, circle the word ask, for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. So let me paint a little picture here. So we had our review questions, and in our review questions, we identified all the areas of self that manifested in our day yesterday. We've now corrected those things. Okay, that's your inventory. That's cleaning house. Now that we've identified it and we corrected them, what does step 6 tell us? Are we entirely ready to have God take them away? Well, here it is. We're just practicing that same principle over again. All right? And what are we doing? We're asking God to direct our thinking. Because who does the removing? Whose power is it? It's His. So here we are, going to practice that same principle now as we're asking Him to direct our thinking. And then what's step 7 tell us? We humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. What are we doing? We're asking God for inspiration, intuitive thought, or a decision. Because the word humility for me means this: I can't and he can. When I'm humbly saying that I need God's help, that's saying that I can't do it. He can. And what do I need? I need inspiration, right? I need intuitive thought. I need a decision. And under that condition, we relax and take it easy. Here it is again. And why do I relax and take it easy? Because I'm not running the show. Here I am in that stream, right? I'm just letting it take me wherever I'm supposed to go. I'm enjoying the scenery and I'm being the watcher. I'm having fun. I relax, take it easy. I do not struggle. There's some vision work here, right? What does it look like for you to relax and take it easy? This is where I'll do a body scan again in meditation. Now that I've sat back, I take a deep breath. I've looked at some things. I've made the corrections. I've asked God to direct my thinking to the now. I've asked him to divorce that thinking of any selfishness, self-centeredness, self-seeking, dishonest, being afraid. All those motives, ask him to take it away. I've asked him for inspiration, intuitive thought, or a decision. And now I'm going to just... That was intense, right? That was a lot. Everything that we just got done talking about in the last 2 hours was a lot. So what do I have to be reminded of? Because I'm an alcoholic, man. I'm just go, right? We got all ramped up. And we needed to take a break. So in that break, I went and sat out there on the couch and I prayed and I meditated. I had to get right back. I had to relax and take it easy. Because this stuff is fun, man. I get passionate about this. This is my life. But I also have to remember that God's the guide in this deal. And this is the same thing in meditation. And that's how I apply that to my life. As I relax, I take it easy. I don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. Great reminder. Thank you, Bill. I'm not going to get instant results. I have to keep trying this for a while. And then I can look back at it and I can see, wow, look at that. God gave me an intuitive thought yesterday. Wow, God gave me inspiration. This works. This is amazing. What used to be a hunch or an occasional inspiration, excuse me, gradually becomes a working part of our mind. So this stuff just starts to be automatic, he says. Being still inexperienced, as I am today, and having just made conscious contact with God, meaning we just hooked up with him. And you know what? That's the vision that I try to have for myself each day. When I get there in the morning, man, I'm just it's all brand new. A new experience. Just having made conscious contact with God in the morning when I got out of bed. Brand new. It is not probable that we are going to be inspired all the time. Meaning that this isn't going to be all the time. But we might pay for this presumption and all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Like, oh, God, show me the parking spot. Oh, look at that. God gave me a parking spot. This is awesome. Or, when we start to experience God move in our lives, I mean, how many of you guys sat in meetings and you heard how God gave you a parking spot and he gave you this and he gave you that and he gave you this? And in the beginning, we're just like crazy and people look at us like, geez, man, these guys are flakes, man. Listen, God gave them a parking spot? What? And what I've learned in my experience over time, perhaps, and that's it, perhaps maybe I was just on time. By being present, I showed up when that parking spot was available. And that's how this thing continues to go. And in the beginning, it's hard. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I got sober, I was that rooftop drunk, man. I was up on the rooftops in Bay City, Michigan. This is the answer. Everybody needs AA. This is the most amazing thing on the planet, right? Well, it was that same position I took when God started talking to me and I started to develop this conscious contact. I was like so flaky and inspirational. It was just crazy, right? And I paid for it. And that's what he's telling us right here. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely on it. And that's the expectation for me. And people say, oh, expectations are bad. Really? So, if I follow the instructions of this book, and after each instruction is a promise, I'm not to expect those promises to be fulfilled if I do what the book tells me. If I ask God for inspiration, intuitive thought, or a decision, I'm not supposed to relax, take it easy, and expect direction, inspiration, intuitive thought. How many times have some of us have just let go and surrendered? And how long have we asked for something over and over and over and over, and we continued to insert our will, but then when we finally let go, boom, the answers came, right? That's why he tells us, I totally believe this, that we're to relax, take it easy. We don't struggle. And when we don't struggle, the answers will come. So we ask for inspiration, intuitive thought, or decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We get to see how God has worked in our lives. The answers will come. So you following me with seeing how God gave you answer? He gave you intuitive thought. He gave you a decision. Now keep that vision in your mind, because this is how it's intricately woven together. Now that we've seen how God has moved in our lives, we usually conclude a period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day. Here's another part of the book. It's all through the day, every situation. Through the day, they changed it from the original manuscript. The original manuscript said every situation. So let's go back and read it. That I be shown in every situation. Right? And what does that look like? What does that look like to have God show me? What is that vision of God showing me in every situation what my next step is to be? Well, if we go back to the previous prayer, we asked him for inspiration, intuitive thought, or a decision. And then we saw how the answers came as we continued to do it. So when we see how God answered and gave us direction, that's that vision that we're supposed to have right here. We're supposed to take that into every situation. And we ask God what our next step is to be. That's the expectation. If I do the work, meaning follow these instructions, get consciously hooked up with God, I can expect his direction. And then I ask him that I be given whatever is needed to take care of such problems. Because I suck in management, man. I tried to run the show. At least I thought I did. But I never really did. He was always running the show. And that I'm going to have problems every day. But I'm supposed to trust and rely on God. And that's where I ask him to provide me whatever is needed. And you know, one of the exercises that my sponsor gave me that I have the guys do that I work with is write a miracles list, a miracle inventory. And that miracle inventory is an inventory you can look at and you can see where God did something for you that was a miracle. And that's God providing you whatever you needed to get through such problems. So being able to refer to that allows you to have a vision or some truth of how God has moved in your life. And that is the vision that we're crafting here of, okay, I see how you moved in my life yesterday. You helped me. You gave me direction here. You gave me an intuitive thought here. And God, I'm asking you to show me that through every situation today. And Lord, I pray that I be given whatever is needed to take care of such problems, especially for the freedom from self-will. Because we go back to that third step again, right? How do we entirely be rid of self? It's by His aid. God does it. And I got to bring that back to my memory right here. Who gives me freedom from self-will? God. I have to continue to ask. There's my reminder. And this is where, third step for me, what I want doesn't matter. I don't get a vote. If I'm struggling with it, then I'm imposing what Ernie thinks he needs or what should happen. It's not that. I'm relying on God for that thought. So I have in my book right there is what I want doesn't matter. God tells me what my next step is to be, not the ego. So let's read through that. And if we carefully make, here's where he reminds us that we carefully make no request for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. I'll tell you, man, I've learned over time, here's my prayer. God's will be done for John. That simple, man. I don't know. I don't know what God's will is for anybody. None of my business. Heck, I have a hard enough time going through this deal every single morning, being a watcher, carrying that vision into every activity, and expecting God to tell me what my next step is. Who am I to say what you need? I can't do it. So it's real simple. These are my prayers for people. That God's will be done for you. And having an idea of what God's will is for me, or at least in the moment, that's all I got. And the best thing I can do for you is to get to be in what God would have. And that allows you to find God's will for yourself. So if circumstance warrant, we ask our wives, friends to join us in morning meditation. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select, circle that, or at least that's what it's in action, select and memorize a few set of prayers which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. So what are some of the principles that we have been discussing so far? Anyone? Would selflessness be a principle?
Patience, tolerance, kindliness, love.
Okay, that's good. And are we to... Yep, it's good. So we've discussed, we've hit step 3 a lot. We've hit step 7 a lot. So this is the place where we bring in our 3rd step prayer, our 7th step prayer, the 11th step prayer. And really, the main principle of it all is what? It's thy will be done, right? And that's where it's my reminder. I have it wrote in my book that when I'm done with the 3rd step prayer, the 7th step prayer, and the 11th step prayer, I just finish this one off with, God, your will be done today. Our next prayer, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated and doubtful. And like I mentioned before, in my book, I cross out the we and I make it I. I make it personal. Many other places in this book, I turn statements into questions. And I ask myself. It's just imperative. So this is how it reads in my book. As I go through the day, I pause when agitated and doubtful. So I pause right there in that meditation and I see, okay, was there any point in time yesterday that I went through the day that I was agitated and doubtful that I didn't pause? Because I might have missed something. And if I do, I stop, I see myself. Okay, next time I need to be a better watcher, because it's usually I wasn't watching and I missed something. And I ask God for the right thought and the right action. Because whenever Ernie's agitated and doubtful, that means that I'm spending time with the ego. I'm believing that I'm running the show. And the show isn't going off the way that I think it should be. And I need to pause in that place, asking God for the right thought and the right action, reminding myself that I was never running the show. The book says we constantly remind ourselves that we were no longer running the show. I don't know about you, but I've wrote enough inventory and done enough of this work. I was never running this thing, man. I just had the illusion that maybe I was. And the results were just terrible, just driven by 100 forms of fear. So I remind myself that I was never running the show. Next page. Humbly saying to ourselves many times through the day, thy will be done. There's that reminder. And I'll tell you, I really struggle with this part still to this day. Because I can pause when agitated and doubtful and remind myself that I was never running the show, but really, that reminder is thy will be done. And he even says, humbly saying, and again, that humility, meaning when I humbly say thy will be done, that means I can't do it. He can. God's running the show, not me. And I have to remind myself that it's his will, not mine will, be done. And this is just, we are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. Interesting, huh? I don't know about you, but I get high on excitement. And it doesn't always have to be, excitement like going to a theme park kind of excitement. I've found myself getting excited about unhealthy behavior. It's like, ooh, this is fun. Ooh, this is exciting. Someone else's drama, right? Well, ain't none of my business. I'm in this world to play the role that God assigns. Being patient, being tolerant, being kind, loving. And I'm not running the show, he is. And it's his will be done, not mine. And when I can take such a position, I'm in less danger of that excitement, of fear, right? If I'm reminding myself that God's running the show, what the heck do I have to be afraid of? Right? And then if that fear does crop up, I can pull out my fear tool because I'd done the spiritual work before I was crazy. Monkeys chattering like 1,000 buffoons in my head, right? Like, nope. I know what this is. I'm feeling out of control. Right? And what does that look like for Ernie? What would God have me be instead of out of control? Well, I grab my fear tool. Be a channel of love, kindness, tolerance, conscious contact with God in every situation. And at this point in your meditation, you've already crafted all this. You've already seen, what you're supposed to do in every situation. We become much more efficient. We don't tire so easily, right? What happens when you're swimming upstream? That wears you out, don't it? But when you just sit back and let the stream take you down, it's not work. You don't tire. For we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works. It really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined. So we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. Isn't that something? That right there sums up step 11. But there's one more prayer, one more place in this book that that God tells us, or I say God speaks to me through this thing, but Bill tells us, gives us another tool. So if you go to page 164, there's that word ask in paragraph 2, 164:2. Ask him in morning meditation. So I circle the word ask. In morning meditation, what I can do today for the man who is still sick. So again, I make it personal. I take the word can to I. I take the word today to today, right now, for the man who is still sick. And I meditate on that. I'm like, okay, God, what can I do today for the man who is still sick? You know, who would you have me call? Who do you want me to get in touch with today? And I sit there quietly and I wait for the answer to come. Today he gave me 2 people that I needed to call. One guy I haven't talked to in a long time that I didn't even think about. And that's part of my plan again. I write it down. Got to have that pen and paper. If I don't write it down, I don't do it. If I don't write it down and then craft a vision of seeing myself do it, the chances of it happening are not. It's not going to happen. So I write it down. Here's a condition. The answers will come if, circle it, your house is in order. Okay. So what I've learned here is I ask God, please show me if there's anything in my house that's not in order, that stands in the way of me helping a sick man. Please show me so that I don't spread this sickness. It's key. Okay? If I'm not doing the work, and I'm not going to God, and I'm not writing the inventory when those resentments come up in the forgiveness prayer, if I'm not correcting the discrepancies in these review questions, if I'm not constantly going through this deal, asking God to show me if there's anything in my house that's not in order, do you know what I'm doing? I'm spreading this disease. How many times we sit in AA meetings and we listen to people spread the disease around the table? Because if you're not hearing this solution, meaning the black letters in this book, from the doctor's opinion to page 164, then perhaps maybe the disease is getting spread. And that's the message that I believe God would have me carry, because that's what I'm responsible for. What's my primary purpose? It's to carry the message. What is the message? This book. From the title page to page 164. That's what I'm supposed to do. That's the solution. What gets in the way of that? My selfishness, my self-centeredness, right? That we think is the root of all our problems. In doing this work, I can still get all the way through my review questions. I can get all the way down to this last prayer, and I could have still missed something. So I have to rest again. And I ask God, what can I do for the man who is still sick? And God, if there's anything in my house that's not in order, please show me so that I don't spread this sickness. It's the last thing I want to do, man, is to give you guys more disease. You already got enough. I got enough to dish out, but I don't want to be the man going out and doing it. John can tell you how many times did him and I read this book, man, I spread my disease off to him. How many times have I've made amends to him? I don't know how many times, because I've given him my disease. Most of the time all the time, I'm very unconscious of it. But when I become aware of it, right here, asking God to show me, and I see it, I get that pen again, write it down, right? That's an amend that I need to make through the day. Any questions? Well, there you have it. You had 12 prayers, 12 meditations, and visions. It was an extreme crash course. So now, for reminder, you have the worksheets, and the worksheets might the guide or whatever might have different verbiage or different words. I mean, it comes, most of it, 99% of it all came from my sponsor and his work. I made some corrections, some things that I've added from my experience. And if you trust God and follow these instructions yourself, you're going to add some things too, because your journey, your adventure is not my adventure. And I can only hope and pray that you guys take this and go on an adventure and know that we're in this deal together. Our Steel on Steel each week is a place that we can come and share this experience with each other as we hold each other accountable in doing this work. You can see where, are you doing the 12 prayers? And your Steel on Steel, I don't know where it's at, but something that, I can get, I get so used to it, I don't read the questions. I just kind of answer the question because I've done it so much, and we can go over it. But question number 7, Steel on Steel, says, have you been doing the 12 prayers from the big book every day? Okay? Not from your head, not from these crazy worksheets that please don't make me write inventory over, but out of the book. Okay? So if you're reading the book and you're having trouble getting a good idea of where it's at, you can go back and read from the worksheet, which is someone else's experience, and it could help you to go on your adventure and have your own experience. Are you following me? Please make sure the core of it is out of the book. The problem centers in the mind. So what happens when you do prayer and meditation out of your mind? It's a disaster. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. It might work for a little bit, but what'll happen is 3, 4, 5 days will go by, and you'll realize that the tension is not going away. You're screaming and hollering at everyone, or as John says, you're kicking the dog, which I have 2 of them. I do prayer and I craft a vision for my dogs, man. Isn't that crazy? I have to. Because sometimes I'm going through the house 100 miles an hour and they love me so much, they're stuck to my feet and I'm tripping over them and I just want to grab the dog, right? It's like, wait a minute. You know what the dog's doing? Being a dog. You know what dogs do? Oh, hi, how you doing? Oh, I love you. We're going to play. We're going to take me to the Frisbee. We're going to run. What are we doing? We're going to go for a ride. What are we going to do, right? That's my dog. And what, am I going to be mad at him for being a dog? I can't do that, man. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with kids. How about this? How about an alcoholic you're working with? When he's acting like a self-centered, selfish prick, I mean, what's he doing? Being an alcoholic, right? Mm-hmm. Patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. Remember, we don't fight alcohol or alcoholism. We relax, take it easy. And that's it. Look at that, man. 12:02.
That's great stuff, Ernie. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, man. That was really good.